There comes a time in every poet's life when words betray him, when even the rhythm of his own heart begins to sound like a stranger's song. For Sheikh Hamdan, that moment came the night silence became his only poem. He had written verses that could heal, spoken truths that could move mountains, but nothing could express the ache that lived inside him now. His ink had dried, his muse had vanished, and all that remained was the haunting echo of everything left unsaid. He once believed poetry could save him, that if he could write about the pain, he could release it. But how do you free yourself from something that has become your pulse? His nights turned into quiet battles, between the man the world saw and the heart that broke behind closed doors. Silence was no longer peace, it was punishment. The kind that wrapped around him gently, like a lover's touch, only to remind him of everything he'd lost. Every corner of the palace whispered memories of her. The hall still carried her laughter, faint and fleeting, like a ghost that refused to rest. He walked through his kingdom surrounded by gold, yet he felt poorer than ever. The wealth of the world could not buy back the sound of her voice, the warmth of her presence. And so, he learned to live with absence, he learned to speak through silence. There were days he stood before the mirror and didn't recognize himself. The sparkle in his eyes, once so full of dreams and compassion, had dimmed beneath the weight of invisible sorrow. The prince who once inspired millions was now a poet lost in his own labyrinth. His heart had become a battlefield where love and loss danced endlessly, neither willing to surrender. The world kept calling him strong, but they didn't know strength could also look like quiet suffering. They didn't see the nights he spent awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every touch, every moment that could never return. The poet who once spoke to the world through verses now found refuge in silence, because words had begun to feel like lies. Sometimes, he would ride alone through the vast desert, letting the wind speak where he could not. The dunes understood him in a way people never did. They had seen him at his most vulnerable, his tears mixing with the sand beneath a moon that never judged. The desert was his confession booth, his sanctuary, his reminder that silence, too, could tell stories deeper than words ever could. She had taught him how to love, silence had taught him how to endure. It was a cruel exchange, one he never asked for but one he learned to accept. He realized that sometimes, love doesn't end, it just changes its language. Hers became distance, and his became silence. Together, they spoke in absence, two souls bound by everything they could no longer say. Every poem he didn't write was a letter meant for her. Every word he swallowed became a heartbeat heavy with memory. His followers saw beauty in his restraint, but they could not hear the cries hidden between his smiles. He had become a master of masking emotions, a prince of poise and pain, a man who carried storms behind calm eyes. He often wondered if she missed him the same way, if her silence was as heavy, if her nights were as long. The thought both comforted and destroyed him. It made him feel connected to her and yet further away. He had once believed love was about speaking from the heart, but now he knew, it's also about what you never say, the words you guard because they're too sacred for sound. He began writing again, not to heal, but to remember. His pen trembled, unsure whether it was allowed to touch her memory. Each verse became a confession only the paper could keep. And when he finished, he didn't publish it, he hid it away. Because some poems aren't meant to be read, they're meant to be felt in the silence between breaths. His silence soon became his strength. The world continued to admire his grace, unaware that it was built on heartbreak. His silence became his armor, his poetry, his prayer. In it lived every word he could never say to her, every truth that the world would never understand. It became the only language that truly belonged to him. He learned that silence is not emptiness, it is depth. It holds more emotion than any verse could ever carry. There are nights when the silence grows so heavy that it feels alive, breathing beside him, whispering the verses he never dared to write. It carries her name like a secret prayer, echoing through the chambers of his heart. The world thinks silence is empty, but for him, it is full of memories, promises, and the fragments of a love that time could not bury. He often looks to the stars and wonders if she hears it too, if her heart recognizes the same quiet ache that lives within his. Because even when he says nothing, his soul still speaks to hers. He has learned that silence can heal, but it can also haunt. There are days it wraps around him like peace, and others when it strangles him like regret. It is both his shield and his punishment. He keeps a calm face before his people, a gentle smile before the cameras, but inside he is fighting to keep his voice steady against the roar of everything unsaid. The poet in him wants to scream, but the king in him knows that silence is dignity. And so he carries his sorrow gracefully, wearing heartbreak like a hidden crown. Sometimes, when the desert wind howls through the night, it sounds like her voice calling his name. He stops, listening, hoping for a miracle that will never come. The desert has become his mirror. It reflects the emptiness inside him and the beauty of stillness outside him. There, beneath the moon, he finds the courage to cry, not as a prince, not as a public figure, but as a man stripped of everything but love. His tears fall quietly, but each one carries a universe of words he can no longer say. There was a time when he believed silence was weakness, but now he knows it is strength, the strength to endure without explanation, to love without expectation, to lose without resentment. The world may call it mystery, but it is simply pain wearing elegance. Through that silence, he has come to understand the divine language of the heart, the one that needs no sound, no verse, no applause. Love, he realizes, does not always need to be spoken to be eternal. Sometimes it just needs to be felt in the spaces between breaths. He writes again, but not for fame, not for eyes to read or ears to hear. He writes for himself, for the soul that still remembers what it's like to burn. His notebook has become his confessional, each line a drop of truth, each stanza a wound slowly closing. When he finishes, he closes the book gently, places it beside his heart, and whispers, "Let this be enough." Because sometimes, poetry isn't meant to be shared, it's meant to be survived. And so, Sheikh Hamdan continues to live between two worlds, the one of silence and the one of remembrance. To the world, he is a prince, a poet, a symbol of grace. But in the quiet hours of the night, he is simply a man still talking to his past through silence. His heart remains in the shadows, not because it is broken, but because it is still waiting.